The East Central European response to the consolidation of nation-states in 1917-1919 was marked by the intersection of a state of total war, violent increasing ethno-nationalism, growing tendencies of marginalization of the Jewish population, and the collapse of the imperial order. The hegemonic notion of nation-statehood in East Central Europe emerging out of World War I was of ethno-national hierarchy in the nation-state of the constituent nation. Such notion suggested that the state should first and foremost serve what was understood as the ethno-national interest of the constituent nation, either Polish, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, or Romanian. East Central European Jews gradually became othered, alien to the general society, and with foreign interests. How a group like the Jews, or more precisely their leaders in the Polish, Czech, Lithuanian, Ukrainian states in becoming, should react vis-à-vis their exclusion from the body politic, from we the people of the state, and from economic livelihood. How would they react to a structure blind or even worse, which justifies explicit anti-Jewish violence? How should they demand their civil and political rights? And what is the meaning actually of such civil and political rights? These were the problems the Jewish leadership in East Central Europe confronted in the liminal period between the collapse of multi-ethnic empires and the creation of new nation-states. The unification of politics and of social relations during the Great War combined together with the absence of basic civil definitions and the rising of essentialist discourse of nation and nationality that delegitimized people in between with hyphenated self-definitions, brought to the radicalization of Jewish ethno-national leaders that argued that in light of nationalizing policies of the states in becoming and growing anti-Jewish violence, only a mechanism of NTA could guarantee Jewish existence in East Central Europe. Those leaders organized across East Central Europe temporary political bodies, Jewish national councils, led mainly by local Zionists with a clear NTA agenda that filled the power vacuum created in Jewish society in many areas during a short, intensive, and significant interim period between the collapse of the old Habsburg and Russian imperial order and the rise of the new Wilsonian order. Of course, there are many differences among the Jewish national councils, but they can be attributed to the structural conditions created by the collapsing imperial order, regional difference regarding demographic balance, and a variety of idiosyncratic conditions. However, the common denominator of the Jewish vision of the new countries presented by the Jewish national councils was grounded in two assumptions. First, that the Jews as an integral part of the society were legitimately entitled to express their own vision of the future state. The second, that the Jews were entitled to complete equality on all levels of societal life. The efforts the Jewish national councils made to include the Jews as a minority group equal to others in the new states took place in the framework of the ethno-national ethos as the constitutive principle of state building. They accepted nationality as the defining criterion in the state building projects, but they looked to replace the principle of ethno-nationalism as the basis of an ethno-hierarchical state by ethno-nationalism as the basis for full and complete equality, institutionalized through organs of personal or cultural national autonomy or minority rights. Convinced that autonomy will promise cultural development, fair economic reconstruction, and provide security to the threatened Jewish population, they demanded on behalf of the Jewish population recognition of the Jews as a nation and concomitant minority rights. The goal was, above all, real, concrete, and tangible equality for the Jews as other minorities, effective equal participation and fair distribution of state resources, concrete and symbolic. For instance, socioeconomic structural dilemmas faced by the Jewish National Council in Ukraine, established in late 1917 as an organ of the personal national autonomy system, reappeared in the case of other Jewish national councils established in Poland, Galicia, Lithuania, or Bukovina in late 1918. Such, for example, they claimed that the right to use the Jewish vernacular in relations with all governmental institutions would enable to broad Jewish population access to state services, correcting social inequality. Or demanded that Jewish religious or cultural characteristics, as the spread use of Yiddish or Jewish Sabbath, would not undermine equal access to the labor market regulated by the state. In the same vein, they considered the mandatory Sunday rest as a way to push off the already marginalized Jewish middlemen, to discriminate Jews' access to public positions, and demanded state recognition of the Jewish Sabbath. Clearly, what was considered culture in one discourse has obvious economic dimensions for others. The Jewish National Councils claimed that the use of a liberal or social system of justifications, universal rest day, was a tool to explicitly discriminate Jews, to shrink their social mobility, and to create an ethno-national hierarchy. Jews experienced deliberate efforts to minimize Jews' participation in the legislative process. Therefore, Jewish national councils all over East Central Europe proposed different mechanisms to keep fair representation in all legislative and official bodies that handle issues of the entire population. Anxieties worsened due to the interpretation of the national interest by the hegemonic political leadership as ethno-national. Such, for instance, the Lithuanian Taryba interpreted economic Lithuanian interests as agricultural, while craft and commerce, economic branches with an enormous Jewish presence, were disqualified as non-Lithuanian or foreign. In all these cases, and in many others, Jews were discriminated collectively in the name of liberal principles and procedures, allegedly independent of any religious and ethno-national bias. The Western model of liberal emancipation and equal civil rights would not defend the Jews in the new states in East and Central Europe against these exclusionist tendencies, claimed Jewish national councils. The combination of discrimination perceived by Jews as stemming from their ethno-national differences with a regime of liberal justifications corroded the liberal model among the Jewish population. It led to the radicalization of Jewish ethno-national discourse that strengthened the NTA demands and simultaneously weakened the ethno-social third space. To confront that, Jewish national councils used ethno-national paradigms and terminology as state constitutive in a way that eroded ethno-national hierarchy, limit the authority of the ethno-national majority over its minorities, and neutralize the ethnic aspect of socio-political inequalities embedded in the new system of nationalizing states. The local authorities' rejection of the Jewish National Council's demands in the context of increasing exclusion and anti-Jewish violence radicalized more their claims, narrowed more the place of those supporting liberal solutions, and constricted more those with hyphenated inclinations. All that reinforced the Jewish leaders' belief that only strong external pressure would guarantee Jewish rights. The failure to obtain supporting of their claim in the local arena pushed them to the international arena. They were trapped in a vicious circle. On the one hand, the only way open to them was the transnationalization of the Jewish national struggle for minority rights as an essential step towards limiting the sovereignty of the nation states over their ethno-national minorities. On the other, their turn to international intervention reinforced the perception that Jews are threatening the state in becoming. That poisoned more the already poisoned political atmosphere. Paradoxically, the Jewish struggle to become recognized as part and parcel of the new state as one of us reinforced their status as one of them. They took advantage of the new site opened for such struggle at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, where they looked for ways to propose their demands in an international framework. In their aids, Woodrow Wilson's vision had given rise to the need for a new approach to state and nationhood. The chaotic world of expansive diasporas and disputed borders could not be properly disciplined by giving majorities the possibility of imposing their projects over minorities using symbolic or concrete violence. Local law and politics, they claim, must both accept the realities of transnational communities split between states. Implementing non-state diplomacy, Jewish national councils organized a transnational Jewish delegation to the peace negotiations in Paris in early 1919. They expected that the peace conference will coerce guarantees of equal civil and national rights, understood not only in cultural terms, but also in political and economic terms. Moreover, the transnationalization was based on their belief in the transnational character of the Jewish nation. They expected that the Jewish delegations coming from the West, especially the new Zionist leadership, would support their demands. However, this West European leadership, especially Chaim Weizmann, that dominated the Jewish national camp at the Paris Peace Conference, was fully concentrated on the implementation of the Balfour Declaration. They regarded the Jewish national councils primarily as instruments that would give legitimacy to the demands for a national home in Palestine and refused to deal with national rights in Europe. But behind their interests, both sides were responding to their different fears. The Jewish national councils sought protection against exclusion and a concrete threat to Jewish life in Eastern Europe. The Western against a threat to their hard-won status in the Western democracies. After discussions, the Jewish delegations in Paris included demands of minority rights and NTA, but they were subordinated to the agenda of their Western brethren. In light of that, different Jewish National Council representatives took different approaches to the matter. For instance, as a result of a pragmatic alliance between Jewish and Lithuanian national leaders, the Lithuanian delegation included a representative of Lithuanian Jewry as the Lithuanian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and accepted Jewish claims in exchange for Jewish support to their claim. The Jewish card played by the Lithuanians proved to be ineffective, and they ultimately dismantled the Jewish national autonomy in Lithuania. Pressed by the Czech leadership, the delegates of the Jewish National Council of Czechoslovakia demanded vague minority rights and did not coordinate its politics with other Jewish national councils. West Galicians and Polish Zionists negotiated by their own with the Polish delegation, with no success. While on questions regarding Palestine, the Jewish delegations presented a quite united front. When dealing with NTA for East European Jewry, each representation worked quite separately, reflecting both the discrepancy of the Western and East European Jewish leaders and the idiosyncratic conditions in each of the East Central European arenas. In any case, as Carol Fink pointed out in her book, what the Jewish delegation at Paris did or did not demand for themselves was not the primary determining factor in the formulation of the minorities treaties. It was rather the peculiar changing conditions in the international arena in which those demands were made. Clearly, the Jewish leaders of the Jewish National Council in Paris during the peace conference increasingly understood that they lacked the resources necessary to be effective in their negotiations. Moreover, they understood that if the states in becoming would willingly accept some version of the Jewish demands, the international umbrella offered by the international system of minority rights is almost superfluous. If not, the international umbrella would be ineffective. In this context, it is clear why the idea of international federalism as expressed in the League of Nations and its institutions became increasingly popular among them. In the new world order created after the First World War, an international system based on the federalist principle thus appears to them to be the only option left open for the Jews to overcome the nationalizing policies of the new states. However, as we all well know, leaning on the international system proved to be a broken reed. However, the lack of success doesn't diminish the seriousness of their project. Thank you.